Go ahead, John.
Okay. Um, Okay, so we are opening the Architectural Review Committee meeting for the City of Palm Springs. It's a special meeting agenda today for Tuesday, June 18th, 2024.
That's an old one.
Let's see,
Call to order.
call to order.
And the roll call?
And roll call,
Okay. Member Dosia is excused. Member McCoy?
present.
Member Pollane? Here. Member Walsh?
Here.
Member O'Donnell? Here. Member Thompson? Here. Member Thomas was going to be coming, but we do have a quorum.
I got it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So, okay, report of posting of agenda.
Mr. Chair, the agenda for this meeting was available for public access at the City Hall exterior bulletin board, at the west side of the council chamber, and at the planning services counter in accordance with rules and regs.
Okay. Can I get an acceptance of the agenda?
Motion to accept.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Wait a moment here.
And for the record, Member Thomas has arrived. Welcome.
Okay, this time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Architectural Review Committee on the consent calendar and other agenda items, and items of general interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Architectural Review Committee values your comments, pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. 3 minutes will be assigned to each speaker.
And Mr. Chair, we do not have any speakers other than the applicant for today.
There is one member, or there are two people online. If either of the members watching remotely would like to speak, please raise your hand and I will unmute you to allow you to speak. Mr. Chair, at this time I see no public comment.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the consent calendar. We have the approval of the minutes of May 20, 2024. Motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Chairman, I will abstain. I was absent from that meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, move on to unfinished business. We have a request by Celine Palm Springs LLC seeking architectural approval for the final development plans for the north and south villas residences within the Dream Hotel complex located at the northeast corner of Avenida Caballeros and Amato Road. We please
Staff report, please.
get a staff report.
So, good evening, esteemed members of the ARC. If you recall, this item was presented to you on the meeting of April 15, 2024. And at that meeting, after deliberations and review of the final development plans, the ARC voted unanimously to continue the project and to continue the review and gave specific comments to the applicants and some directions to staff as well. And you also made some very specific recommendations to the applicant. So since that time, the applicant has reviewed, has revised the plan, as a matter of fact, on 2 occasions. The first resubmittal was reviewed by staff, specifically by the urban design staff and then myself. We had some comments and we gave those back to the applicant for a further review and a further changes to the plans. They did, and it is the second revisions to the original set that you saw on the 15th that is before you tonight. And again, I want to reiterate to the ARC that this is the final PDD review. You do know that there are two review processes for plan development project. The first is the preliminary review, and the second is the final. What you are doing, or what is being done, or what you've been asked to do today, is to look at the architecture, the design, in terms of the colors, in terms of the materials, and then the landscape plans. The City Council originally approved the preliminary design for this application on June 5th, 2023. I also want to mention that your review tonight does not include any of the development standards. That means the setback, the site plan itself that has been originally approved by the by the City Council. So that's not what's before you tonight. What is before you is the final architectural design and the landscape plan for the north and the south villas only. The hotel building itself and the service building that is behind the hotel is not part of your review tonight. So, as I mentioned earlier, you first saw these final PDD plans on April 15, 2024. And at that meeting, I'm just going to summarize the recommendations that you made to the applicant on that meeting. Number one, to provide diagrams or roof plan layouts showing adequacy of the rooftop on mechanical screening. And number two, that pool and patio overhangs to provide increased shading and include location of photovoltaic systems on roof plans. And number three, to provide additional detailed information on materials noted as woods or synthetic wood. Number four, to provide details of the bridge structure connecting to pool, terrace, and the service building. That is that bridge that connects the South Villas to the service building. Number five, to analyze potential of widening sidewalks along public streets and provide more visual breaks in the perimeter garden wall. Now, I want to expatiate on that a little bit. That is part of the site plan, the overall site plan review itself, which, as I mentioned earlier, the City Council originally approved. In the memo that staff prepared for you, I included the 4 specific conditions for approval attached to the that are related to the sidewalks itself. So that would not be in your purview. Those have been reviewed as part of the grading, the specific, or no, the final grading plans, and the third-party contractor that is reviewing those for the city have those conditions, so they will be met regardless. I just wanted to put that before you. And then number 6, to provide clarification of wall materials, the finish and color of the ramp into the subterranean parking area of the North Villas. Number 7, to provide illustrations of property line common to the center court in width and adequacy of planter strip for trees and shrubs. And number 8, to address all the staff comments that were contained in the staff report of April 15, 2024. So the applicant, we are given all of this, and they have addressed those. We respond, like I mentioned earlier on, we responded to their earlier revisions, and they made further revisions, and that's what's been presented to you tonight. Now, there are a couple outstanding issues that will be handled either at this Planning Commission or City Council level. Number 1, that is the entry grades that is being proposed on the South Villas, that's along Avenida Caballeros. That was not in the original plan or the original preliminary plan that the City Council approved in 2023. Therefore, there is going to be a condition of approval requesting the applicant to remove the gate or propose an amendment to the City Council to include the gate. And then secondly, there is the issue of the perimeter treatment. In the the plans you saw on April 15th, there was a board form concrete wall. Staff has met with the applicant to remove those because that was never seen by the city council. They have agreed to do that. And also to use the original materials approved by the city council on June 5, 2023. I did include some of the schematics of the material and the height limitation of those walls in your staff memo. I will also show that in my presentation to you tonight. So moving on, again, this is the overall site plan of the project. It hasn't changed at all. The North Villas are to the north of the site plan, and that will be this area right here. This is the main hotel building, although that is not before you tonight, and this is the service building I talked about earlier. It's not also before you tonight. However, the South Villas is what is before you, and this is the gate, the entry gate. Even though when staff met with the applicant made a case for it, citing that all the developments along Avenida Caballeros do have entry gate. Staff made it very clear that that would not be in the purview of the ARC. Should they intend or plan on pursuing that, they will have to propose for an amendment that will likely go to the Planning Commission and the City Council. So this slide here is just to show what the council approved and what is before you tonight. And this is just to indicate that there have been no changes, and this is just solely on the architectural design of the two residential components of the hotel, of the Dream Hotel. Now, these are the, I'm not gonna bore or waste your time on so much on these. The only changes you will see on the floor plans are the addition of overhangs that we provide shading that we talked about so much at the last meeting. So the reason I included them is if you want to go back and make some comparison, but they did address those. And you also ask for more details and clarifications on the roof level, on photovoltaic locations on the roof level. So that's what this is here. So if you go back, if you recall at the last meeting, the locations were not indicated on the roof plans. And here are the elevations for the North Villas. What is different here, mostly, or what's remarkably different here are the increase in the overhangs to provide shade that you talked about at the last meeting. I think it's very evident on this rendering here. And here are the materials being proposed. Here are some additional elevation plans. And here is a section drawing that also shows more clearly the increase in the overhangs. So these are the South Villas floor plans. Again, the reason I'm including them is to show the changes that have been made to address the comments you made at the last meeting. And this is the roof level plan for the South Villas, also showing the location of equipment and photovoltaic panels. And here are some of the elevations for the South Villas. And again, the sections for the South Villas also showing the changes that have been made to the roof overhangs designed to provide additional shading. And here are the selections of materials and colors. The applicant will be speaking more on the type and the makeup of the materials. Also, we talked about some issues on the plant selections in the last, the plant selections and of course the planting itself, especially on the perimeter plantings of trees. So if you go back and if you recall, especially on the perimeter areas, you notice that the tree planting has been revised. And this is more consistent with the Section 14 specific plan. I did run this through the tribe again, and initially when the amendment came before the planning department, we ran it through the tribal planning department, and their planning commission and their council, they did approve it because they found it to be consistent. And as a matter of fact, they told me they want the project to move forward. That was the one keyword they mentioned to me. And these are just additional illustrations on the landscape and the landscape elements. The different plant selections. Some of them are outside of what is contained in the Section 14 specific plan, but are contained in the city's lush and efficient landscape guidelines that we use to evaluate landscape plans. And I mentioned earlier about the perimeter treatment. And although if you notice in the plan that you have before you now, they have removed the board form concrete that was proposed at the review of April 15. So two things here. Here are the materials that the City Council approved. And staff is asking the ARC to approve a condition of approval that we are proposing, that the height limitation remains at 7.3, which was originally approved by the City Council, and also to stay with the materials approved by the Council, consisting of tubular steel and some slat materials and hedges for the perimeter treatment. Again, these are some renderings of the villas. That view from Calle Alvarado really shows how different the overhangs, the roof overhangs are now compared to what you saw initially. These are additional renderings. These are all contained in the packages that were sent to the ARC earlier. So in light of all this, staff will be recommending approval of the final development plans that's before you tonight, subject to these three conditions. And if there are additional conditions that the ARC may want to add to this, subject to the approval of the the Department of Planning Services approval, that will be fine. However, here are the three conditions that staff is proposing at this time. Number one, that the proposed entry gate at the South Villas along Avenida Caballero shall be removed. Alternatively, an amendment will need to be sought from either PC or the City Council. Number two, that the maximum height of the perimeter fence shall be limited to 7 foot 3 inches, as was previously approved by the City Council. And number three, that the materials for the proposed perimeter fence shall be consistent with the original materials approved by the City Council. That will conclude my staff report. If there are any questions, staff is available to answer those. The applicant is also here tonight to make a presentation and to answer any question that the committee may have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir.
And Does anybody have any questions for staff?
I do, Mr. Chairman. It, the staff recommendations, the three that we're looking at there, isn't it, is it not moot in terms of what the view would be of ARC on number one, since the applicant would have to go to the planning commission or the city council anyway? If I have that.
The reason staff included that is that the applicant may want to make the case to you that they wanted the gate, but if once you
Okay.
agree with staff's recommendation, that would then send it back to PC or CC.
Great.
And maybe just to add a little clarification, so we actually have a policy in the general plan that prohibits gates in projects like this. So that is why staff is taking the position that it is. And so the process typically is that where planning commission is the final arbiter, they sometimes have the ability to override that condition in the general plan. In this case, because city council has granted the site plan approval, we feel city council would have to be the final arbiter on it. So ultimately, that decision rests with the council, but staff's position is the general plan policy prohibits the gate.
Okay, thank you both.
And was that gate intended for the private villas for security? Because that is also an entrance to the hotel, I would assume.
So actually, the main entrance to the hotel is along Calle Alvarado, but there is also that access could also be taken into the hotel. However, the primary function of that access would be to the South Villas.
To the South Villas. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. And one more question on what were the changes proposed for the perimeter fence? Because I didn't see those.
Oh, yeah, so if you recall at the last meeting, it was board form concrete. But in meeting with the applicant, they did agree in that meeting that it would be changed and then be replaced with the original material that the council approved in 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, but we just wanted to memorialize that, and that's why we are including that as part of the conditions of approval.
Got it.
Edward, I got a follow-on question to that. On page 5 of your staff report, there's 2 diagrams. There's a diagram at the top, and then there's a diagram that says previously approved perimeter walls. Can you just, I find the drawing up above to be really nice, and the previously, what I'm thinking is the previously approved to be not as nice. So can you give us a little clarification on what, is that the board form concrete, the one that looks like champagne color in your report?
No. Those, if I'm right, those are slats, right? The you're talking about. Let me pull it up here. I think I have it here. Right.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
The top.
Yeah. This one right here.
It's much more interesting than the one below it. So
So the one below it is just a tubular, like, wrought iron fence, if I'm correct, right? So perhaps the applicant can, so as you look at the diagram to the right of this, so this is the entirety of the perimeter, I guess. I can't recall now, because which will go along Avenida Caballeros, Amado, or on Calle Alvarado. Perhaps the applicant can speak to that a little bit.
Mr. Chair, if you're willing, we can have the applicant.
Yes.
Okay, do I need to turn it on, or is it on? It's on. So actually, in our discussions, what we agreed to do or discussed doing was using the board form concrete in select areas, for example, on the corner of Amado and Alvarado, and then using the tubular steel. Our designers would prefer to keep the board form concrete, but in discussions, we said that we would alternate them because this had hedging, so it was all hedged previously. Our goal is to try to keep it private inside, so that people can't see into the pool or climb over. So in discussions with the city, we're looking at doing board form concrete like on the corners where there are gates going into the restaurant, then it goes into the tubular steel, and then at certain locations, it's intermixed with the board form concrete at locations where we need gates or other access points.
And is that champagne color at the top, is that the board form concrete wall?
That looks like to me the tubular steel. I don't see the board form concrete up there. It would actually be board form concrete, like a gray material.
Horizontal.
Well,
Horizontal,
there
exactly.
could be a vertical board formed with the boards.
I think they were planning horizontal though.
Okay. So Edward, I'm intrigued by what's up there, and I could just drop it and say, but I think that would look better along the perimeter of this project than the one below it. If they're both metal and they both meet the height, and they both meet the locational requirements that has been previously approved.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up. And I also want to mention to the ARC that the materials is within your scope of review. So whichever one the ARC decides that will make the project more successful, it is within your purview to pick that. The only part of this that is being determined is the height limitation.
Right, I think there is a long history here, of course, and I think different decisions have been made by different bodies, a little bit out of the order of how we would do things now. And so I think the primary concern, if we look sort of purely at what the scope of Planning Commission and City Council is the height. And I think maybe if the ARC was interested in entertaining changes in the materials, perhaps the way to do it is a direction to punt it to staff, just to make sure we're not sort of circumventing any other bodies.
Was it an aesthetic decision why the board form concrete was disallowed or not recommended?
Part of it, yes, but also typically the city does not like to wall off developments. And that is why, especially with such a development in such a very prominent area, so that's one of the position that we took when reviewing this.
And just for clarification, a follow-up question on the height of the wall recommendation at 7.3. What is it currently?
So the applicant had proposed 8 feet in some areas and 8 foot 6 inches in some area, but 7 foot 3 inches was previously approved by council, and staff will want the height limitation to remain so.
And what is code, 6 feet?
Yeah, code would, in that zoning designation, 6 feet would have been the height limitation. However, the city council approved 7.3. So.
And that's our concern about going to 8, is we would be, I think, circumventing City Council's authority on that.
Why did City Council agree to 7.3?
Sorry, we would be circumventing City Council's authority in exceeding what they had previously approved.
And they made an exception because?
Potentially in response to public feedback and other comments that the applicant provided in terms of securing the site and just kind of the overall aesthetic of the development.
Any other questions for staff? Okay.
And if we might, just for the public record, and since you're probably going to speak more, just identify yourself.
For this, I'm Lori Kibbe, Saline Palm Springs. Good evening. I actually don't have any comments to say except to answer questions. We've tried to be very responsive, obviously, to all the requests. I think we've responded to everything, either adjusting it, moving the trees, relooking at the fencing. Our conditions of approval, actually in regards to sidewalk widths, which was not mentioned here, we're driven by conditions of approval, so we'll abide by those. We've created overhangs to the extent that we don't have to actually start adding columns and changing structure. And we think we've accomplished most of what you've asked for. So I'm here to answer questions, and I will say we did get started yesterday, so the project is finally moving forward.
So Lori, thank you for your time. Can you tell us what the increase in the overhang is, roughly?
I know the architect's on. I think it went, it's like 5 feet thick. On? They might be with Sasha, maybe, but Vic was supposed to be on. We would, going to the entire depth of the balconies would require us to put in new columns and change the whole structure of the building. So we extended to the structural engineer, I believe it's 5 feet.
Yeah, a few-
Member
Yeah.
Walsh?
Thank you. A few questions, Mr. Chairman. As long as we're talking about the overhangs, just a question for the applicant. Is it 5 feet in total or 5 feet that was added to the overhangs that were there?
I think the total is 5 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, that makes sense to me. One of the things that I did notice in staff recommendations was, it was sort of an open invitation to look at vertical paneling of some sort. And the thing that I was kind of concerned about is that both of the elevations of issue are east and west. And it's just brutal killer sun, and you've got these beautiful flush framed glazing units, floor to ceiling. So I just don't see absent, a screen mechanism of some sort, but it sounds like you did not want to go down that road.
But what we did actually do is we added some walls. So interestingly enough, on the south side, we have added walls, so it's not 100% glass. And we've talked with the city about ensuring, we looked at screening.
Yes.
We couldn't really determine whether there would be sufficient screening that you could install to really provide any difference. We're going to have to control some of it by the CC&Rs as to what goes up. We did the overhang change, and we did add some walls. So there, for example, on the 5th floor, it used to be glass all the way around. Now one whole wall is wall instead of glass. So we have added panels of wall to try to cut down on the amount of light going through.
I can appreciate that. It's the type of thing that it's either solved at the inception of the design, or your owners are going to solve it for themselves. And it just seems like something that needs a little more attention.
Well, we've done what we can do. I have a home facing south and west, so I do understand the problem.
Yeah.
At some point, it is left up to what you can do on the inside. We won't be able to, we can't add columns. We're not going to add columns. It changes the whole structure. The cost is dramatic to be able to get the kind of overhang that's necessary to completely block out the sun.
Right.
And there are certain times of the year that it'll be more difficult than others,
Yeah,
obviously.
no, absolutely. May I ask a couple further questions in terms of materials? I saw, the screening for the AC units, the condensers on the rooftop. It seems to be a mix of both the vertical wood texture along with stucco. Is that correct?
Yes.
Both. So
Yes.
it's kind of a mix and match thing, and they're sort of at different heights, and that's what, for aesthetic relief of some sort?
Yeah, so it's not just a big wall. You shouldn't be actually able to see most of
Yeah,
them
I
from,
kinda
except
got
from
that.
quite a distance, but
Right, the elevational drawings don't do it justice in terms of the perspective that you would be looking at it from. The other thing, the bridge, the material detail photograph of the vertical wood panel is pretty opaque. You can't see through it, but then the way the bridge is drawn, it looks like a peekaboo thing kind of happening there.
it's
in
actually
elevation.
slatted on only one side. So it's open on the north,
Okay.
and it's slatted and
That's
obscured
it.
on the south.
Okay, that, yeah,
That's again to the issue of sun and heat.
okay, yeah, a good thing. Okay, that's it for me. Questions? Thank you.
I have one. On the north villas, you're calling out a metal C-channel edge for the balconies. On the south villas, it looks white and there's nothing called out. Is it the same material, or is it intended to be different?
We're using the same materials on both.
So it will be the black C metal? Okay, it just looks, it's white on the south and it's black on the other renders, so
No,
I guess
it'll be
that's
the
just a
same
mistake.
materials.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I'm struggling a little bit. Either Lori needs to do a better job or staff needs to do a better job, because here's how these things would go with my office. We have a meeting, the meeting goes pretty long, they get bullet points, we take it back, sit down with everyone on the design team, and there's 3, 4, 5 people on the design team, and the guy who was leading the project last time. And I would have expected somebody from the design team to come back and succinctly go through what we talked about step by step to give us some clarity as to how you're moving forward. Right now, the drawings look better. You're able to answer the questions, which is great, but I'm left not knowing what the design team really intended to do and where they had to deviate from what we were asking. And so not knowing that leaves me sitting here thinking, do I just trust that this thing's going to move forward with the best intention and that everything was covered, or do I ask for more? So can you help me?
Well, unfortunately, I got the notice that this was happening last week on Wednesday, and we had a major design meeting in San Francisco today. So the entire design team was in San Francisco, and I remained behind and did that meeting by Zoom so I could be here. I thought Vic was going to be here, so I do apologize for that. I was part of all the meetings. We do have a very large architectural team. We did exactly what you said as a group, and unfortunately, I thought he was going to be on the phone, so I'm disappointed that he's not here, but I am familiar enough with things to try to answer them. But I can't explain why he's not here, I'm sorry.
What would staff recommend?
If you go back to the staff report, the staff memo from pages 2 through page, I believe, page 4, staff did request for a written response to all the comments made by the ARC and by staff. And their comments were included in your staff memo. So number 1, for instance, where you ask for a diagram or roof plan layout to identify adequacy of rooftop mechanical, screening to screen all. So following that, you see the response written in italics. Those were any response you see in italics were from the architect, the applicant's architect to those comments and the direction that you gave. And staff intentionally did that so that you can review those and make a determination as to whether they addressed your comments as you intended or not.
Did staff know that the design team wasn't going to be here today?
They did not.
Quite frankly, no, I wasn't aware of that.
Because what we're missing is, I'm very visual. I think everybody here is visual. And it's the connecting the text to the moments that the drawings changed and having somebody point those out. So it's just customary, and I feel like I'm having to, I don't know.
I would say that
Trust,
in
yeah.
the responses, it does reference each page and the detail of the change. I don't know if that helps. I mean, we've tried to be responsive. I don't know that we're trying to circumvent anything.
No, that's not what I'm trying to say. It's just, it's a process and it makes this difficult. Yeah. Otherwise, we could just sit at home and
Read.
How onerous, how difficult is it to get another meeting scheduled and have the team here and go through this? It's an important project. Unless staff just thinks,
I think I'm just unclear on what is missing, Member O'Donnell. I think that there's a very detailed staff report with a lot of appendices that try to outline the changes. And so I think our expectation is that, it's laid out there and it's been reviewed and we're happy to answer questions. But I think we are at a point where this project sort of needs to move forward. So if there are specific questions, we're happy to help you answer those and answer those for you. But I think it's in your report, it's in your package.
anybody else feel the same way, or am I just kind of winging it?
I think your point's well taken. I think going forward, there may be something that we can do to make the process a little easier for us, because it does require a lot of work to go back. I mean, we trust that you have the best intentions. I mean, that's come across from the very beginning, and we trust Edward's point of view on the staff report. But it's really hard when you're looking at something visual, and you've made comments on something visual, and then you get an updated package that references all of those, but there's no visual support to it. And it's hard to glean that. It's hard to glean that the terraces are an extra, whatever the addition is, it's now 5 feet. You can't really see that visually. So it's just an additional reference, especially for something that's so visually important and impactful. I think that's the point that Member O'Donnell's making. So maybe going forward, we could think about how, when we get to a final design phase, how we go through each of the line items, not just with language that supports the change, but some sort of visual marker so it's easy for us to understand the difference. So.
Noted, thank you.
It's also the first time that we're not getting a packet, so we're having to do it on laptops and computers, and so it makes it a little more difficult to see all those changes. I mean, you can reference it, and I did go through most of them, and they are there, but having not had the packet this time actually did make it a little more difficult to review the project.
I think something just as simple as a split screen going forward would be great. These are the 8 items that we talked about. Here's what it looked like when we gave it to you. This is staff's recommendation, and here's a visual cue that supports that. I mean, that's, that's pretty basic, pretty simple. Because it's a lot of detail. And I went through the original stuff with the 8 notes, and I took notes, and I still can't put it all together from memory.
Specifically, I'm also missing the small little, I don't know if they were completely detached units. There were lots of discussions about solar control, glazing on the little units that were closest to the neighbor. And I haven't seen anything today about the changes to those units. Can somebody pull that up and show us what went on with the townhomes or whatever they are?
Would you like me to speak to the changes?
Yeah, if you can point them out.
Absolutely.
Take the pointer, point out what changed.
So to start with, they used to have a garage and a carport. We expanded the underground garage and put all of the cars below, including under each of the 3 villas. So now I need to go to the north.
Yes, so just
Backwards. Am I going the wrong way? No, here we go.
okay. All right. Okay, keep going now.
No.
Going.
I don't know that I saw a picture of the 3 villas that I could actually point to, but if you remember that there was if you came off the perimeter road, each of them had a turn-in. There was a 1-car garage and a carport. That's gone. We expanded the underground garage to have, they all have individual parking garages within the garage. Now the 3 villas also have their own parking below their villas with a staircase that goes up to their unit, which connects to the unit that, so they have their own internal staircase to their unit. So they have underground garages now. So that's the first change. That's the major change on them. I don't know that there was any discussion about glazing on those particularly. We have paid attention to where the walls are against each other. The kitchens are on those inside walls, and we now are using clear story wherever we need light on those sides so that there's privacy within each of those units.
So staff, we don't have a diagram of any of the thing that Ms. Kibbe's talking about?
I think there's.
Member
there were floor
Donnell,
plans.
those diagrams are contained in the, I don't know, 60-page package that were sent out to the ARC.
I think there are floor plans for them.
So, I have a copy of the package here if anyone want to see those. So,
Much resistance.
at page 30. So these are the units that that you're referencing, right? These 3 units on the North Villas, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
I will say that we're not using circular staircases. Those have been changed, and these drawings have not been updated. Circular staircases do not work, so.
The basement.
Do you have page 36 that was in the packet? So
So this is the ground floor for
west townhome elevation?
Yeah, so this one right here.
No, it's the little buildings. There you go. So at the previous meeting, we had discussions about that west-facing glazing on, it's shown there, number 4 west townhome elevation. And, you know, I'd say it's a huge improvement to get the garages out of there. Yeah, that immediately turns it into a much more pedestrian-friendly environment. But we still have some challenges here with the west glass, east glass, and southern glass of these little units. We specifically talked about it at the last meeting. It didn't get bullet pointed. It was just part of the overall solar control. And I can see where the large buildings were addressed, but do you know if there was any changes to these buildings?
There were not, because these 3 buildings, especially the 2, you have a 5-story building that sits to the east of, to the west of them, which, if you look at a sun study, basically they're in shadow a good part of the day. You have a hotel, which is very close by, which is also 5 stories, the condo hotel. So believe it or not, these are in shadow quite a bit of the day. In the morning, they're not, obviously, but as the sun moves around very quickly, I think after 11 o'clock, they fall into shadow a good portion of the day.
And so if we're relying on the western building for solar control, have you also looked at privacy between a building that's creating the shadow for this and the balconies and the sight lines down into these units?
They have, and again, there's overhangs and privacy and landscaping. We're using a variety of things. The distance is enough where it's not where you can actually see into the units. The angle is such that you won't see into the units. You are looking down, you're not looking in. And if you look at the setback of the 5-story building, it sets back quite a bit as you go up. The first story of the building immediately is a lobby, so. And there's a perimeter wall around the 3 units. For each one of these units has a perimeter wall, which keeps it private at the first floor.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to go back to the perimeter wall. So in the last presentation, you had changed the walls to the board form concrete. We had a discussion about space and room. Was that part of that to save space rather than having hedges? And do you know what the hedge material was?
No, actually, moving to board form concrete, one of the founding principles of the new design team is concrete modernism. And so there's quite a use of concrete throughout this project as a design element. And they wanted to bring that into the landscaping in the form, in the fencing or in the walls. That's the basis for it. My understanding from the discussion the last time I was here was that the concern was that there was no permeability, like there was no opportunity. So we first looked at, should we divide the wall so that you have sections of board form concrete with peekaboo areas, not that you could get through it, but you could look in, which is, by the way, how we did the fencing before. If you look at the design of it, it would be at angles, and there was small little, like a zigzag, like a zipper. So we thought we would go to that. But then when we had the discussion about what was approved previously with the city, their comment was we needed to do what the conditions of approval were, which was the 7'3" with the approved material. Previously, it's buried, what's planned was buried in hedging. And it was the typical hedging that you have in Palm Springs. You know, a green hedge just creates a wall, and the fence would be buried in it. It's not like it actually would be that visible.
Okay. So longevity of the hedges, 20-plus years from now, hedges have been clipped and trimmed and pushed for 20 years, and roots still, they grow, and they will potentially crack concrete and move the wall material, or the steel. So I guess, can you give me more direction as to what current thought of the current design?
Sure.
What's the ideal
Sure.
of what the design team has put forth?
So we were just in our discussions told to go back to the fencing material, but I don't think that we were moving away from what we also call cactus on steroids, which is another founding principle for this design. So I don't think that the landscape architects are moving away from using the other materials that they intended to do in front of the fencing. They want to keep those. And so how the spacing of the tubular steel fencing, I think they're having to study that and figure that out, how it goes with what they're doing. I don't know that they're wanting to go back to doing these giant hedges. One, takes time. Even if we put in 10-foot hedges to start, it's not going to create, it takes a couple of years for those two. And it's not within the design theme of what is currently designed either. So I think they're looking at how to combine the two. And I think that if in the landscape that you have, we haven't changed that. It's just that what's in the fencing has changed, would change.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. Have a discussion items for the committee? Okay. All right, so do we have proposal budget?
Yeah, I'll move to support it with staff's recommendations, staff's 3 additional recommendations. Need a second?
And can I
Amend?
make it?
Absolutely.
Can I amend it to number 3, review the materials of the perimeter as to preferred design elements of the current design
So when you say materials, are you talking about landscape materials, or are you talking about the actual fencing material?
If they can use the board form concrete.
So you would like to make a recommendation that they go back to board form as opposed to a combination of the two?
Yes.
So that would have to go back to city council?
I think the way to structure that potentially is to say, how do we want to say this? That ARC supports the use of the board form concrete, subject to Department of Planning Services confirmation that it's compliant with city council approvals.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is that I think it's a long frontage, so I think breaking it up somehow might be a good idea. So I think we should look at the combination of materials as well.
I'm comfortable with that amendment.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed.
No.
Walsh and O'Donnell.
Okay. Right. That is,
And Mr. Chair, for the record, the motion does carry.
motion carries.
Yes.
Okay. We have any, where are we?
Additional business? I don't think so.
Unfinished, we have no new business. Any reports, Architectural Committee reports, requests, or comments? Okay. Do
Forgive me, what was that?
you have any comments for the committee in general?
I think one of the issues that we have sort of struggled with this evening that has manifested is the lack of quick ability to be able to get a package. And, you know, I got a lot of pushback, and finally, sympathetically, I was handed one. So I have the precious gold this evening, which is information that we certainly need. And, you know, I've kind of made the case before that the issuing of graphic material to this committee is different, and I think we heard some of this last night, than the issuing of, you know, or the goal, the stampede to get to a paperless situation with other committees and other commissions. And I think this points up a case that is pretty self-evident, that we need to be able to study these things in advance, query if there are coordination issues within the package, and to not have that puts us in an awkward position of having to make a decision without really feeling informed. So I have spoken my piece.
Well, if I might respond to that, because, you know, and I think it was a bit of a disconnect in processes that were kind of aligning, and so I hear the concern and I acknowledge it and agree that it probably made this meeting difficult. What we are doing is, and this doesn't fully address your concern, but this is the solution that, you know, has come out of conversations with City Council and the budgetary process, et cetera. We will be deploying iPads to each of you to at least give you the ability to mark up, comment on, and have the materials digitally with you in these meetings rather than the physical paper copies. So I know it's not as perfect potentially as a large paper plan, but that is the solution that we have. And those were to have been rolled out to you by now and weren't for a series of reasons, and I think just got disconnected from the agenda prep process. And so can acknowledge that that was an oversight on our part. What I will commit to doing is A, getting those rolled out to you before our next meeting in July, and if not, making sure that you do have paper agendas. We will make that exception to make sure that we're not in this position again at the next meeting. But that was the entirety of the what we anticipated would happen, and it just, you know, things happen.
And I appreciate the efforts and the recognition that this is an issue. And I think that there might be one piece missing in this, and that is, I believe that much of this has come from the wisdom and the insight of the Sustainability Committee. And one of the key links is to be able to talk to your end users in terms of what is needed. And I don't know, I have not personally been contacted by them to be able to respond to any query. But I think, and I don't know if anybody else has, but that's a key. I think if you sort of get in architecture, we talk to the guy who's going to live there, right? So that's the connection that needs to be made, and I would suggest that would be a helpful step. But thank you for addressing the issue.
Yes, I will acknowledge it's not an easy change to make. I mean, it's the layering on of several things. It's certainly sustainability and climate action goals and direction coming not just from sustainability, but from the city council. And then also the shift to the online EPL system, which, we don't get the copies of the nice plans that we used to. And so essentially the onus is then on us to print and prepare those materials in a way that we didn't have to before, and that unpacks all sorts of issues in terms of staff time, but also the cost of printing. So, yeah, we're doing our best within the parameters that have been set, and I hear you, and we'll continue to troubleshoot this together and make sure that you are able to function and do your work.
So I'm going to jump in a little bit because I think I opened this document and I viewed it on my iPad, and I actually didn't have any issues. And personally, I'd like to reduce the amount of paper that we use, so I'm in support of moving away or maybe giving people an option if they want a hard copy. But I don't feel the need to have 7 printed copies of a really large deck on a regular basis. I think and then we all go home and throw it in the recycle bin or we dump it before we leave. So respectful of your point of view, but I would just like the option. I think the issue for me is not having the paper in front of me. I think the bigger issue that Lance raised, which I think is really insightful, which is when staff goes through, you guys see this on a daily basis and you're very familiar with it. And when you come back and say, these are the 8 things that we talked about the last time, and these are the 8 steps that we've taken, the ability to tie those things to some kind of a visual cue that's easy for us as we go through the deck, I think that's a fundamental difference. And that doesn't matter if it's paper or if it's electronic. If I can make that immediate association, so when I get here, I've already reviewed that the overhang has been increased by 30 inches or 48 inches. That's an easy association and makes it easier to have the conversation in person. To me, that's more important than whether it's paper or electronic. That's just my insight.
Yeah, I'd add on to that. I mean, typically on a revised project, we see a side-by-side comparison of here's what was presented, here's the modification. And in this one, we just saw the new stuff. So it was very hard to go through a written document and tie it back into a visual. So I think staff needs to, request that the petitioner actually put those materials together to have a before and after, essentially, for us to understand what's going on.
Revisions for dummies.
Yep. No, I mean,
Super simple, right?
Right.
It's good feedback. This is complicated. There's a long history here. There's been lots of changes, and I think an easy way to see that. I absolutely hear the point.
But I still don't know what kind of wood's going on it or what type product's going on it. I have no clue.
And another thing. I think that this process has been handicapped by the lack of the design team. And it absolutely crippled the presentation process. I mean, any sponsor is going to do their best to sort of, grab details, but you have to speak the language. And you have to be able to hit the target. And I think that to have the participation of the architect team there could have helped this pull in probably full approval. And I'm sorry that it didn't, because it probably deserved it.
Us too. And I think,
Yeah.
as you heard, we were unaware that was happening. And
Yeah.
just to correct, and with all due respect to the applicant who was here, I mean, we were holding this special meeting specifically because there is an interest in expediting this process. So this is not because we wanted to spend our Tuesday night doing this. And so we had an expectation that everyone would be available and ready to discuss this.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all for your resiliency.
Planning director's report?
And I've mentioned the iPads already, so we will coordinate. I don't think that we're going to have a July 1st meeting, just looking at the way that things are penciling out. So that will give us a little bit of time to figure out this technology and agenda package for the middle of July meeting. I will say, and I'm stealing some of Ken's thunder here because this is his moment, but since I'm already rambling on, we are in the process of recruitment. A number of you, many of you, our terms are up at the end of June. So for several of you, this may be your last meeting. And I'm looking at Member Paline, Member Walsh, and Member McCoy, and I think the rest of you may be remaining. But we're going through a process, and we're hoping we may see some of you return, or we may have new members. But if you're not returning and this is your last meeting, thank you so much for your service. And for the rest of you, we hope to take recommendations to the Planning Commission at their meeting next week to fill the vacancies. So that process is very much underway. And Ken, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I think the most important thing is a sincere thank you for your service on this board and the time that you take to review these projects. Thank you.
What does August look like?
Dark. No meetings. Yeah.
Dark and hot.
Yes.
You forgot Dusty.
And then I believe because of Labor Day, our first regularly scheduled meeting in September will be the Tuesday
dust is
after
killing
Labor
me.
Day, if the agenda, if there's items. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. So we are now adjourned.